Good evening, everybody. This is Monica Guzman coming to you live once again on a very late weekend evening. And my theme for this weekend has been remembering Ty Cobb. He passed away July 17th, 1961. And immediately after he passed away, he was still a very much celebrated American figure. It wasn't until Al Stump came out with his version of Cobb's autobiography, and then it was picked up by the Jewish side of Hollywood that Cobb started to get attacked. And I believe he's the first American baseball pioneer who was attacked in this manner. Obviously, in 1983 came the attacks on Cap Anson, and today the same attacks waged against the American baseball pioneers, or at least these two specific American baseball pioneers, are being waged against Americans on your own soil, which is still insane. So tonight, I want to talk a little bit about Ty Cobb and what life was like in the late 1800s, early 1900s on American soil. I want to congratulate Mexico. They just won another soccer game. I never paid attention. I never realized how much soccer there is over the summer. It's like soccer palooza. And I mean, this isn't even World Cup stuff. This is just another trophy that they're playing for, right? And it is insane the amount of soccer happening right now. But Mexico came out victorious yet again. Congratulations to the team. And I watched a portion of the game tonight just to kind of check out the action, see what's going on, listen to the broadcasters, play-by-play guys, whatever you want to call them, in Spanish. And I think a lot of it just has to do with the fact that Spanish is one of the Romance languages. So when somebody talks, in this case, when somebody's broadcasting a game in Spanish, they're able to insert these phrases and it just, you can't translate that into English. Maybe you can translate, maybe the French could get away with this, maybe the Italian can get away with this, but like at one point, somebody had the ball and the other team took it away, and the announcer said something to the effect of se duerme. So the ball got taken away because the dude fell asleep. Like, you can't insert stuff like that in English. It just doesn't come off the same way. Even in sometimes I'll catch the news, and news in Spanish is far different from news in English. It's more personal. But again, I think that's because Spanish is part of the Romance languages. So it has a different connotation, a different feeling. It's more personal. It's I think the closest thing you'll get to the feeling of a Spanish broadcast in English is Vince Scully. Thankfully, he's still with us. And Vince Scully was a poet. And I'm not sure. Sometimes I wonder if Vince Scully and Tommy Lasorda hadn't been around, if I had stuck it out with the Dodgers as long as I did. Obviously, Tommy Lasorda just was amazing. And then Vince Scully's the poet. And so Vince Scully's the closest thing you'll get to a Spanish broadcast in English. Just the way he was always able to weave his stories. His last season, he spent quizzing those of us that were listening. He quizzed us and he was able to weave a lot of things. So the reason why I'm telling this story right now is because I am starting to connect a lot of things. So Ty Cobb, an American baseball pioneer, the man who was voted into the Hall of Fame 4 votes short of unanimous, a man who was celebrated for what he did on the baseball field, and a man who should be celebrated for what he did off the baseball field. I mean, you've got MLB players giving away toys and giving away, okay, they're giving away school supplies, they're giving away baseball equipment, but Ty Cobb funded the building of a hospital in Royston, Georgia. Ty Cobb set up scholarships that are still given out today. So Ty Cobb's charitable accomplishments far outdo whatever MLB players are doing in 2021. Yet that's not what he's remembered for. That's why it's up to those of us that know to talk about it, to share it, and to help those legacies remain alive by helping our children understand what greatness truly looks like and helping them pass it on to their children and so on and so forth. Otherwise, these stories are going to die off. It took me a few months, a few weeks to find firsthand material on Ty Cobb, on Christy Mathewson. I wasn't able to find firsthand. I haven't found yet. There are some articles that Cy Young wrote that I need to dig up. But Honus Wagner doesn't strike me as the type of man who is going to write an autobiography. And then Walter Johnson, I don't think there's an autobiography on him out there. But I apologize if I'm a little sedated. It is hot. I know it's not Midwest hot or humid, but it's been the same temperature for the last 6 weeks at this point, and it's exhausting that there's no fluctuation in the temperature. It just wears out. There was a year when in LA it was still hot into October. And I remember this because we had a season of earthquakes because the heat would just not go away. And one of my teachers in a class said to us, I know it's still hot. I know you guys are suffering, but I need you to pay attention in class. And she told us that it wasn't our fault because when you've got concrete, the concrete is, especially in a school where you have asphalt or the blacktop is how they called it during my day. It absorbs all the heat. So even though, obviously the sun goes down at night, there's a few hours of no heat being radiated directly onto the floor surface, but the surface doesn't have enough time to cool down. So the next day starts, the sun comes out, and it just starts over. It's still hot. So the heat and the humidity are catching up to me, so I apologize. And it's not that I don't like air conditioning. I think that's one of the most wonderful inventions that Americans came up with, or at least Americans improved on, because, right, it started off as literally an ice box. And then it evolved into a heating, air conditioning, ventilation system that was only installed in movie theaters. And then around the 1940s, they figured out how to make it smaller and more compact. So around the 1950s, HVAC systems, central HVAC systems became standard in American homes, and then they took off in the 1970s. It's not that I don't like HVAC, it's just I really prefer natural heat, natural air. It just feels so much fresher. It's like the lights, right? Like you're never going to artificially light somebody to their best. And if you do, you're basically burning under a light. It's just you can't duplicate anything that's natural. And so I apologize, but the heat is just, I think we're getting some relief by next Friday. So we'll see how it goes. So, and then just, I was rereading a bunch of stuff on Ty Cobb passing, and Ty Cobb had several health issues by the time he passed away. He was diabetic. It's believed that he had cancer. And then he did quite a number on his physical health as a baseball player. The way he used to slide into the bases. In fact, just the motion of sliding. I mean, I'm going to admit right now that I've never attempted to slide into a pretend base pad. So I can't imagine what it's like to slide as much as Ty Cobb slid. And then back then, it was a different type of surface. It's not like today where it's nice and soft. And so Ty Cobb really did a number on his legs. So he was in bad shape by the time he passed away, and it's sad. Cy Young's death was also really sad for me, not because he died. I mean, he was an old man, right? Old men, old women. By the time we get to that point, we are deteriorated. We are 1 degree away from skeleton, right? And so the amount of love that Cy Young received when he passed away was just amazing. It shows how much he was loved by the baseball community. And Ty Cobb didn't do himself any favors. Nonetheless, his death was tragic. It's just sad. It was sad the way he passed away, but that's why we have to participate in keeping his memory alive. The attacks on him are not merited. I mean, again, I only caught a few minutes of tonight's soccer game between Mexico and El Salvador. And I think in those few minutes, the Mexicans were the Salvadorians like 3 times. And so we have a very much large TV right now. And so I admit that I even participate. When I went to, at my college, there were a few soccer players, but they were Americans. And so one of the guys told us that at his college, he used to get called stuff like lawn fairies. And they get teased a lot because, you touch them and they roll over, right? But tonight, I don't know if this was an El Salvador versus Mexico thing, or if this is what's happening now across soccer. They don't get tripped anymore. They get spiked. Like, they will step on the back, so underneath the calf, a soccer player will step on the lower, under the calf of the opposing team's player with the spikes. So if you guys are crying over what Cobb allegedly did, you're not going to be able to handle soccer. Like, I cannot believe that you are not man enough to even handle what happens in soccer today. Again, I saw it 3 times. Mexican players stepped on with spikes under the calf. No wonder they are rolling there on the ground in pain. They are being stepped on with sharp spikes. So you pansies who are offended by what Cobb allegedly did will not be able to handle soccer. And while I'm in this little rant of mine, so last night there was a drive-by shooting at the Washington Nationals, or right outside the Washington National ballpark. And again, I like my Twitter settings. I like some of the stuff that Twitter shows me because I don't have to go searching for it. So some dude was at the game last night and he tweeted out his thoughts about what he experienced. And I'm going to admit that even though I grew up in LA and at that time drive-by shootings were a thing, carjackings were also a thing, in like the 80s into the 90s, and then drive-by shootings. I never experienced what it's like to be in the vicinity of a carjacking or a drive-by shooting. So I'm not bringing this up to pick on this man over his experience. I'm sure it was probably traumatizing, especially for a beta. I mean, you guys are wimps, right? Like, it's embarrassing, dude. If China and Russia decide to wage war against Americans, I mean, half of America's males are going to be hiding under the fucking table. Like, you guys are so embarrassing. Compared to like the true American male, there is an image a few years ago during one of Texas's floods, that big Hulk of a man, American made, obviously the dude was American, maybe like Irish descendancy or something, because he had very light colored skin, light colored hair, probably had colored eyes, but he was wearing glasses, like shades, and he was dressed in some sort of like army gear, and he was holding someone's wife. She was very pretty. So he's walking through like water that's up to his waist, and this dude looked tall. And he's holding someone's wife, and her husband's walking behind them, and he's carrying like shoes. And then on top of her, she's got her baby. So there's the American beta, the American nerd, and then there's that guy who saves other people's wives. Like, we've got to turn this stuff around. Okay, but this beta, and the reason why I can call him a beta is because in his picture, he's got glasses on, he's pasty, and he's balding, which is like a thing now among males who reside on American soil, right? If you watch any MLB stuff, half of the journalists, half of the reporters, half of the influencers are balding, wear glasses, either as a fashion statement or because they have poor eyesight. Nonetheless, it's an indication of failing genes. And so this dude was, and I know there's a very famous former MLB player who started balding at a very young age, and I'm not picking on him. I feel like he's the exception to the rule, unless he has a Jewish ancestry, which proves my point. So, Okay, so this man tweeted today about his experience at the Nationals baseball game where a drive-by shooting took place. So he tweeted about his son. The kid is not a teenager yet, and the child already suffers from anxiety. So you've got a preteen already suffering from anxiety at a baseball game where a drive-by shooting took place. So the kid is even more traumatized. Okay, since when have preteen males started suffering from anxiety? Again, it indicates the poor state of the American male. Now, based on the last name, and see, this is where things really start to get tricky. We know, if you pay attention, you know that all the Biden kids are married to Jews. Kamala Harris is married to a Jew. I'm pretty sure that there are other figures out there married to Jews. And I'm going to do a presentation on American Hollywood starlets and failed relationships. I actually think that all of their failed relationships were on purpose. Were brought onto them on purpose to scare them away from American white males and push them toward Jews. So I'm going to do a presentation on that later on. But I will give you insight into where I'm going with all of this stuff. So again, you've got preteens suffering from anxiety at an age where they shouldn't even understand what anxiety is. These kids don't know what it's like to support a family, don't know what it's like to pay taxes, don't know what it's like to be in a relationship with a spouse. They don't know what it's like to care for children who are growing and developing opinions of their own. They don't know what it's like to have to answer to a boss. They don't know what it's like to face criticism, right? All of our work gets criticized by somebody. I mean, I have editors. I had one editor several years ago who wanted me to write something to this day, which I think was totally dorky. And I was like, Jesus, really? So all of the work that all of us produce gets criticized by somebody, right? Now, I admit I have a much better relationship with my editors today than I did a few years ago, but I have that experience that will stay with me forever. And but I've come across far more cool editors, and and the writing field has evolved. So I am making my adjustments to the expectations of clients in 2021, and I understand. And I think it also comes with age. Uh, at least in my situation, I have to adapt, and and it's cool. I'm good with it. But the point is, athletes cry because fans get on them for sucking. Dude, everybody gets criticized, all right? Grow a pair. Grow a pair. Anyways, so now we've got preteens running around with anxiety. What is going on? And that brings me to something that I talked about yesterday with the weaker die off. We're living in a time where the weak are not allowed to die off. It's quite the opposite. We're forced to celebrate the weak. We're being forced to celebrate some coward who attempted to take his life and failed at it. We're forced to worship domestic abusers, steroid users, cheaters, um, sexual abusers, pornography, carrying foreigners. And again, this is all being brought on to us by the Jews. Because if you are, I know for sure in Catholicism, I'm not sure how hardcore Christians are on this, but if you attempt to take your life, you have committed a very grave sin. And MLB is not run by Americans. It's not run by Christians. It's definitely not run by Catholics. MLB is celebrating a coward who failed to take his own life. If MLB was still American baseball and it was run by Americans and Christians, that guy would not have a job because he's a coward who committed one of the worst sins you commit, the attempt to take your own life. But okay. So how many of you guys today in MLB would be able to compete against Ty Cobb? I don't think very many of you would be able to. I think a lot of you would end up crying or claiming that he tried to spike you or just, and then on top of that, I think he would make a lot of them look silly. I think he would outsmart them on the base paths, and I think that he would laugh at, I mean, mollycoddles galore in MLB, right? And Ty Cobb was not friendly to mollycoddles, and there's tons of them in MLB in 2021. So let me take you back to War on the Base Path, a biography written on Ty Cobb, published in 2015. And so far from what I read, it's not biased. There are 2 chapters toward the end that I need to get to. And I feel like if the author's bias is going to come out, it's going to be in those 2 chapters. So we'll see how that goes later on. But so let me tie in one more thing. So yesterday I talked about, I'm encouraging, Ramsey Paul tweeted out a couple days ago that the modern right is trying to win with intellectualism, and the left is trying to win with censorship. So I understand where he's going with that argument. And I know that we're not going to win. First of all, an intellectual is not the same as someone who's intelligent. Intellectual is what lives in DC. It's your white liberals who went to college, they read tons of books, they've never worked a blue-collar job, they work white-collar jobs, and they want to participate in polite society. So these are people that are just book smart, and they're not even book smart in 2021. They are living in an echo chamber where they fluff each other with they don't know the real world, right? They only know the opinions of each other, about each other. They don't know what you and I think of them, which is very little. And so sorry, I did lose my train of thought because, Ramsey Paul's tweet. So when it comes to the founding of America, it was a very, 53 men essentially were responsible for the founding of America. And the population of America at that time was in the millions, right? But 53 men founded the United States of America. So these 53 men had the honor of signing the Declaration of Independence and other documents because they proved themselves. They were able to garner support among the rest of their constituents. And so that's why they ended up immortalized. Now, the right has, we all know this, right? The right has a character problem. So, yet another corporation that garnered support from the American right has turned its back on the American right, which proves once again that anybody who identifies with the American right does not need to support any corporation, any movement, any large group, anything on the national scale. Because our focus has to be local. You need to focus locally. You need to address problems that impact your household directly, your neighborhood directly, your region, your county. That's how you start weeding out people. Basically, people need references at this point. They need people who are willing to vouch for them, meaning such and such has been a member of Lodge 101 for 15 years. Therefore, his lodge is willing to vouch for his character. And then on top of that, we don't need to be voting in people who want to get stuff done anyway. The only thing that people we vote in should be doing is striking down bureaucracy, striking down laws, do what Trump was doing. So for every law that got passed during the Trump administration, 2 or 3 were struck down. And that's why he rolled back a lot of bureaucracy. That should be the focus of anybody that we vote into office, is none of this getting stuff done. It's retracting, repealing, rolling back a lot of stuff. But okay. So where do I want to go from that? So from there, let me just go back to Ty Cobb. So why is Ty Cobb, after his death, attacked by Marxists and others? Because Ty Cobb was a great man, and he's white. He's American white. And as World War I and World War II are killing off potential American alphas, these spaces are being filled by others, namely the Jews residing on American soil. So I'm tying stuff together, even though I don't have the ability to research what was happening in Germany, but I feel like I'm able to tie some loose ends together. So why the Jews were in Germany in the first place, I still don't know. It makes no sense to me. What were they doing there in the first place? Nonetheless, they were there, and they obviously caused a lot of trouble for the German population, to the point where Hitler rose to power. So yeah, I think the Jewish community in Germany made its bed, and some of them ended up sleeping in it, thanks to their community leaders. And then others ran away from it. And so the Weimar Jews that ran away and came to America brought with them the concept of critical theory, which seeks to overthrow the majority. And they brought the concept of racism with them. They call the Germans racist because the Germans stood up to them and pushed back. And so the concept, when, it's not even looking through stuff with woke glasses anymore. I believe that what's happening in America, it's not wokeism, it's Jewish glasses. So the Jews see a white American automatically, just because they're white, they make the connection between what happened to them in Germany, what could happen to them in America, and they call them a racist just because they're white. So that solidifies the fact that a Jew is not a white person. A Jew is a race of its own. And make no mistake, if the Jews cross the border into Mexico, they're going to do the exact same thing over there because they're led by critical theory. Critical theory seeks to overthrow the majority. And so the Jews that ran away from Germany and came to America, and let me tell you, I don't think I've said this on camera. In the baseball documentary, the man who made it is BFFs with the Jewish man who put together the Rotisserie Baseball League, which is basically the precursor to fantasy sports. That man wrote a book, published it, probably it's been 3 or 4 years by now, where he outright calls Americans bigots for not accepting more Jews onto American soil in the early 1900s. So first you've got Jews doing God knows what they did in Germany, receiving pushback, running away from the bet that they made. They come to America, they bring critical theory with them, and they also bring the concept of racism with them. And then in 2017, 2018, a Jewish man writes a book and calls Americans bigots because they didn't accept more Jews while they were running away from the bet they made in Germany. So, I mean, the effects of World War I and World War II have been immense on Americans. They rank up there with bringing Africans to American soil. Obviously bringing Africans to American soil was a mistake. I think everybody's on the same page, right? It was a mistake. And now you've got this issue with Jews calling Americans racist on their own soil and wreaking havoc. And we don't know where all of this is going to end up yet. But hopefully we can push back enough to where a civil war doesn't break out. But we'll see what happens, right? So Ty Cobb is attacked simply because he's an American white male. The people who call Ty Cobb a racist are the Jews that run MLB and the Marxists who follow them. What Ty Cobb did was compete. And I don't think he was the only one who's ever competed with that kind of aggressiveness. It's just that we don't know about it. Cap Anson, American baseball's first superstar, also gets attacked. Not only does he get attacked by Jews, he gets attacked by Marxists and communists. Again, because he was an American white male. And again, these attacks started after the 1960s when American public schools had to start removing Bible study and prayer because a Jewish man and an atheist each brought cases to the courts and they won. In what sane world does a Christian nation lose part of its Christianity? And somebody on Twitter rightly pointed out that the separation of church and state was never the way it's interpreted in 2021. The Englishmen who fled the English crown fled because they were not able to practice religion the way that they wanted to. So, separation of church and state means not being told how to worship, which is exactly what the court cases of 1962 and 1963 did. They denied American Christians the right to worship the way that they wanted to worship. And that includes in public schools. So when you're out there worshiping politicians, I mean, if they are going to roll stuff back to pre 1960s, okay, I understand why you're worshiping them. If you're just worshiping them because you need something to worship, that's when you turn to God. You worship God because He's perfect. Unlike man, whom we know is corruptible, uh, unlike man, whom we know can be bribed, can be threatened, thus he does stuff that on the people who voted him in on, or he just goes greedy, right? We've seen that a lot in the movements that try to lead the American right and always crash and burn. As far as Trump goes, I don't criticize him. I think he did the best he could. But again, his daughter married a Jew. We don't know. We don't know what was being held over Trump. We don't know the kind of advice he was receiving from his Jewish son-in-law. So I can't criticize Trump. I think he did the best he could. Do I think he wants to backstab his supporters? I personally don't think so. I think there was just maybe he didn't realize the immensity of the pushback he was going to receive once he got into the White House. And if he runs a second time, he's going to win. Hopefully he learned, which Trump is super intelligent. I'm pretty sure he learned. Hopefully he'll just surround himself with better people. And I'm not even talking about surrounding himself with right-wing influencers. I think they're just as corruptible as anybody else. I think he needs to pick up people from his business world, and then kind of go from there. Okay, so back to Ty Cobb, an American baseball pioneer who gets attacked after his in 1961. I understand trying to get away with attacking Cap Anson. Cap Anson passed away in 1917? So, okay, your MLB Marxists weren't around in 1917. So I understand. I mean, I'm not going to accept them attacking Cap Anson, but I understand that they weren't born yet, so it's different. But Ty Cobb, some of these Marxists were around with when Ty Cobb passed away. And if you wanted to criticize him, why didn't you criticize him while he was still alive? Cowards. You fucking cowards. But anyways. So I am looking for I don't want to talk about, I feel like I've already talked a lot about Ty Cobb being attacked. And the reason why he's attacked is because he's an American white male. It just doesn't go beyond that. Everything's just an excuse to attack him. So there's a lot on his dad. His dad served in the Civil War. His dad became a prominent member of the community until, unfortunately, his wife shot him dead. It's too bad to lose people like that so soon. So I'm looking for specifically the part about the description of Georgia at that point. Okay, so Ty Cobb turned 9 in December 1895 and would have likely been in third or fourth grade at the time. His studies would have included mathematics, reading, grammar, and spelling, as well as advanced classes in bookkeeping, correspondence, and business. So let's talk about that for a few minutes. What are your 9-year-olds learning in public school in 2021? If you don't know, it's time to find out. It's time to become responsible parents. What are your 9-year-olds learning in public schools in 2021? Are they learning the way Ty Cobb was learning mathematics, reading, grammar, and spelling, as well as the advanced classes in bookkeeping, correspondence, and business? I doubt that's what they're learning, right? We've all seen the videos of mentally ill teachers focusing in on trans stuff and global homo stuff and pornography and uh, degenerate stuff like that. So those of you who are going to run for school boards, I hope that yes, you're going to remove critical race theory from the curriculum, but I also hope you remove stuff like Common Core. And I hope that you start working your way toward restoring prayer and Bible study in public schools. That court case was a direct attack on the Constitution of this country. Therefore, it's easy to prove that those court cases were illegitimate, much like a lot of the legal stuff that's happening right now, right? So Cap Anson and Ty Cobb didn't do school very well. They weren't into sitting around and learning stuff. Yet Ty Cobb managed to retire wealthy. He figured out, he studied the stock market and he participated in some stuff because when he was in Detroit, I don't think it was the stock exchange, but there was something in Detroit that allowed him to experience what it was like to invest. So even though Ty Cobb didn't do that well in school, Ty Cobb ended up a very wealthy, knowledgeable businessman. Cap Anson, again, another one that wasn't into school yet, he managed to do pretty well for himself as one of the first professional baseball players, as opposed to the amateur ones who didn't get paid. Cap Anson was one of the first ones to receive compensation for his services. Cap Anson spent one of his winters, he coaxed somebody to go to night school with him. So when he went back to school, he also learned business and bookkeeping. That's why he was able to manage his finances. And it's very important to share this with you guys so that you remember what this country was like when it was run by Americans. Um, all I'm trying to do is be part of the catalyst that helps restart this country. I don't need to be the catalyst, but I want to at least be a part of the catalyst. And I hope none of this is perceived as intellectual. You don't need a high IQ. You just need a good, the American IQ average of 98 helps you think critically, helps you reason, it helps you problem solve enough to say, hey, you know what, some things need to change. Um, it provides you enough self-discipline to help you learn bookkeeping, correspondence, and business at any point in your life. It helps you pass it down. It helps you raise children who aren't suffering from anxiety in their preteen years, which is unbelievably ridiculous. Ridiculous. I mean, that child, he needs to get away from his dad, because for me, I think it's his dad that passed on the anxiety to the child. Because can a beta dad raise an alpha child? I don't think so. An alpha dad can raise a beta child because the alpha doesn't always succeed in passing on his alpha genes. We've seen it. Otherwise, there would be far more alphas out there right now, but it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. So can a beta dad raise an alpha son? I don't think so. I think the child has to be away from that dad in order to make that happen. Okay, so now I want to skip over to what Detroit, Michigan was like when Ty Cobb arrived as a professional baseball player for that team. And I apologize, I didn't bookmark these. That would have made this go a lot faster. Let's see. What else can I add as I learn or as I look for the description of, here we go. You want to know what life in Detroit was like in the early 1900s compared to what life in Detroit is in 2021? Let me help you out. So this is from Chapter 2, War on the Base Paths. Resting north of the Mason-Dixon line, approximately 767 miles from Royston, Georgia, was the lively metropolis of Detroit, a city culturally and economically infused in contemporary American life. Embellished by striking and ever-growing structures in the downtown area, electric railways along the streets, and a vast industrial complex, the urban sprawl, including an array of easy-to-reach suburbs, was a great attraction for people looking to settle in the Midwest. So people wanted to settle in Detroit as opposed to run away from Detroit. Life in Detroit was going to further improve as the economic stability created by the exportation of chemicals, cattle, and stoves, plus the heavy enterprises of railroad cars, were going to be augmented by the mushrooming horseless carriage industry, which was better known as the all-encompassing realm of automobiles. Motor cars in Detroit would forever be synonymous. In terms of pioneers in the field, Charles B. King, the first man to drive a gasoline-powered auto in the city limits, Ransom E. Olds, and Henry Ford were innovators, setting an extraordinary trend for the world to follow. The Ford Motor Company, incorporated in 1903, grew from 31 employees in its second year to 229 in its third, and ultimately over 55,000 by 1920. In that same amount of time, the number of cars produced went from under 2,000 a year in excess of 1 million. The Detroit population also skyrocketed from 287,704 to 465,766 between 1900 and 1910. And by 1920, It was the fourth biggest city in the nation. So compare that description to the way you'll describe Detroit in 2021, and you see how far down it's gone. And we all know why this happened. And one of my conclusions is that Americans were driven away from cities on purpose. I don't think it was a mistake. I think that taking over cities was an important uh, feat, because now we see it's spreading out to more cities, right? First, it was Detroit, um, Chicago, then it became St. Louis and Atlanta, and more recently, it became Baltimore. And it's just a matter of time before they attempt to take over other cities. Now, I understand that some people out there will say, move to the country. Okay, that's fine. But what happens when the country becomes oversaturated? Or Bill Gates owns all the country sides. And, you know, so we can't run away. We have to stand our ground. It's really important to stand your ground. Baseball was a fixture in Detroit, commonly expected from a viral and prosperous community, and beginning in 1881, it fielded a team in the National League known as the Wolverines. In 1887, the local nine, managed by Bill Watkins and headed Big by the renowned Big Four, comprised of Jack Rowe, Dan Brothers, Deacon White, and Hardy Richardson, won both the league pennant and the World Championship. Resoundingly, it was the biggest moment to date in area sports history. But the Wolverines fell from grace after the following season and faded into obscurity, with only the memories of its accomplishments remaining behind. The game continued to be played on a smaller scale in the years that followed, but attendance wavered and the merit of competition was far below the championship level. So the rest of this stuff talks about what happened to the team. Like everything else, it fell into some corruption. There was some shady stuff happening, but Ty Cobb persevered, and Ty Cobb was able to accomplish several feats. Let me see if I can find really quickly the statistics. So Ty Cobb played 24 seasons, 335 games, amassed 11,434 at bats, 4,191 hits, 1,938 ribbies, 117 home runs, only struck out 357 times, stole 892 bases, and finished with a batting average of 367. So the great Ty Cobb, known as the Prince of Baseball because the title of king was given to Babe Ruth, gets attacked because he was one of the American baseball pioneers. He came from the South. His dad served in the Civil War on the side of the Confederacy. But in this book, it seems like Ty Cobb's dad was in favor of helping out the Africans. So the stuff from me now, the attacks on Ty Cobb are simply because MLB and its teams are run by the Jewish community, by Marxists, and by communists. So given that the concept of racism was imported by the Weimar Jews when they ran away from Germany because the Germans pushed back against what stuff they were involved in over there. They brought the concept of racism with them. they brought the concept of critical theory with them. And so that's, you add into the equation the fact that American alphas were killed by World War I and World War II. So the men who would have turned into gatekeepers for the country didn't return. So there was nobody to protect the flock. Therefore, the flock was attacked, continues to be attacked. And it's up to us, those of us who understand what's happening. It doesn't need to be on an intellectual level. It goes beyond forming communities. It's about protecting your household, protecting your neighborhood, your county, your regions, your state, and then the nation. So I repeat, when you've got politicians from Florida and Georgia flying over to California to, I don't know what they did, that's not necessary. Rural California managed to get Gavin Newsom on a recall election. What California ends up with, I don't know, and I don't believe that there is any candidate out there who will fully represent the California right. We're most likely going to end up with a rhino, or we're going to end up with some global homo, or we're going to end up with another Democrat. It's just, the candidate isn't out there yet. The deadline's still coming up. I believe there's going to be like over 100 people trying to run. But we are not breeding leaders anymore. We've got to start refilling the pond. And it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a couple of years. We have to figure out how to stand our ground in the meantime. But to wrap up, remembering Ty Cobb on the anniversary of his death. Ty Cobb, the Prince of American baseball, the Georgia Peach, was a great man. Was he rough around the edges? Absolutely. But I think you would be rough around the edges too if you lost your dad in the manner that Ty Cobb lost his. Also, Ty Cobb was hazed a lot because he didn't know how to handle the hazing that happened by the veteran baseball players. So he became a little bit bitter from my understanding. But Ty Cobb is simply attacked because he's an American white male. And American white males don't run MLB. And American white males don't run the country either. So I'm just sharing a couple of Ty Cobb tidbits on this weekend where we can remember him on the anniversary of his death. I haven't decided my topics for the upcoming weekend, but I think what I'm going to do is start presenting parallels between 1770 through 1776 and 2021. The situation is getting pretty bad. The people who were at the Capitol on January 6th, it seems like, are going to be held indefinitely this is what they did to the colonists, what the British Crown did it's the exact same thing. The reason why the Bill of Rights guarantees Americans the right to a jury, the right to a fair bail amount, a jury of your peers, representation, innocent before proven guilty, is because similar things were happening to them that are happening to Americans in 2021. So I'm just putting this stuff out there. Once I get into August, I'm going into the baseball. Hopefully at that point, I'll have a different setup. I'll have the software set up because I'm going to be showing a lot of statistics. That's when I dive into my baseball stuff that the perspective is worth knowing so that you can compare what's happening in your niche and run with a different perspective. Maybe that'll spark something else. So thank you to those of you who listen. Thank you to those of you who watch the replay. August, I wanted I wanted to launch on Babe Ruth Day, but I couldn't do it. So it seems like I'm going to launch officially in August. And that may still not be like official launch, but it'll be more. Um, it will be more formatted. So we'll see how that goes. So thank you again. I hope everybody has a wonderful week. I will be live streaming again next Saturday, 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So again, hope you enjoy your week. See you again next weekend. Thank you.